Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today it's time to have a look at another devblog for update 1.93, and if you didn't know, update 1.93 is coming tomorrow, so make sure that you have your updates ready for your War Thunder clients. It'll be here on the 29th. Now, with the AMX-30 ACRA, this is a new vehicle which is coming to rank 6 of France. Now, looking at it, you'd think, oh, well, this is probably going to be a premium vehicle. No, it's in the tech tree, which is wonderful to see. If you actually want to see where it's going to find itself in the tech tree, you can see it here on the dev server video that I did. It's after the AMX-10 RC, so it's in a little bit of an odd place, but then again, I suppose if you label it as a tank destroyer, which is kind of what it is, like a prototype tank destroyer, then yeah, I suppose it kind of fits in that line, but the line's getting a little bit jumbled now. Now you have the out-and-out tank destroyer, the AMX Foch, and then you got the AMX-10 RC, which is kind of a pseudo one, then you got the AMX-30, which is, I suppose, kind of a pseudo one as well. The AMX-30 ACRA actually has a really interesting story about it, and it's actually in, a lot of it is in this history section here, but it mainly comes down to they decided to create a program for a gun which would launch some form of ATGM through the barrel at the enemy in the 60s. The French turned down the program after putting a bunch of money and research into it because it was just becoming too costly, and then in the 70s it was finally realized in the form that you see here. The problem is, though, it was way too expensive, and also people had gone towards stuff like the hot ATGM, which was much more efficient and much more cost-effective than creating a whole different barrel just to fire ATGMs out of. So, also I'm sure the, improvement of armor and all of that stuff, which was coming down the pipeline, would have also affected a gun like this, but the main thing, at least the way it's portrayed, is a cost-cutting measure for something like this. The fact that you had to create a whole new base for a certain type of round probably wasn't worth it in the long run. And even going to some of the costs when it comes to it, the French government may not have agreed to pay the required 1 million francs for the guidance complex and 30,000 for each missile. Now, if you go back to the 70s and have a look at how much francs were at the time compared to other currencies, you could probably get a decent idea of how expensive that was just to fire one of these, ATGMs. But at least in game, it's able to be realized. That's one great thing about War Thunder. You can relive history without all of the cost, which is always lovely to see. So basically what you're getting from the AMX-30 ACRA is the AMX-30 chassis with a new turret, which is very similar to the other ones but slightly different, a new targeting system, so new optics, and also a completely new gun. This gun, which is sat on the chassis, is very much designed to fire just ATGMs and only ATGMs when it comes down to it. It can pen 800 millimeters of armor from its 142mm gun, and it also has access to something different. So not just being in here in the tech tree is slightly different, but you can see this is the ATGM that it fires, so the MP ACRA. It goes at 500 meters per second, which is pretty good. It's semi-automatic, meaning that it's mouse-guided, and also it pens 800 at 0, 693 at 30, and 400 millimeters at 60 degrees. The other thing as well is it can be fired on the move, at least on the dev server. I don't know whether they're going to give it a battle gear or not, but because of the Sheridan, which they actually compare it to in this devblog, the M551 for the Americans, the Sheridan, you don't have to stop or you don't have to be in a battle gear to fire the ATGM. You can go at any speed possible. So therefore, my feeling is, at least for the AMX-30 ACRA, that's going to be similar, or it should be, very much the same. So you can fire this ATGM at any speed. It's also got access to this MUC round, which I don't really think they talk about in here. They might do, I just might have missed it, but the main thing is this MUC round seems to be some form of rocket-propelled HE round, which is very interesting, meaning that it throws off all of your optics and working out how to actually range stuff, but at the end of the day as well, it also means that, at least you have a different option compared to your ATGM. I have no idea why you would take it over the ATGM, though. The ATGM just seems like the way to go when it comes to this machine, It's literally designed for it. It does also have access to a rangefinder and smoke grenades, but at least for me, one of the largest things about this machine, which will make it usable from the start, is that it has access to all of the ammunition options that it requires. So what that means is, if you have a look at the Sheridan, you have to unlock the shillelagh, which is the ATGM that it has. So you have to use this heat shell for a while, which generally isn't very fun to use. The Sheridan itself is also very large and bulky, and until you get the engine upgrades, it is quite slow. You can see the general statistics of the MUC right here. It has 550 meters per second speed, then it has 38, 38, 38 across the board of penetration. I don't know why you would use this round over the MP ACRA unless you were going up against a lot of light vehicles, maybe a bunch of armored cars running around, but yeah, even then, I would still probably just use the ATGM to hull break them. But yeah, the Sheridan, you don't have to you have to unlock modifications to make it useful, where the AMX-30, if you've ever used an AMX-30, they're actually pretty good off the bat. You know, they get all of the ammunition options that they require off the start. They're generally a little bit faster off the start as well, and yes, their armor isn't the best, but the general characteristics that you require, like the 20mm, is, you know, there to be used from the start. There's some of the nicest stock grinds in the game, at least the early AMX-30 and the AMX-30 B2, but the problem with the ACRA is you do lose the 20mm, so that's kind of a downside, but at the end of the day, you get access to all the ammunition you need straight off the bat, which is a big plus, in my opinion, to a machine like this. The other thing as well is, if we have a look at the other machines that you can run with this thing, 8.3 isn't a terrible lineup. You know, the AMX-30 B2, you could upgrade it or up-tier it with the Brennus and the AMX-30 Super. The AMX-13 Hot, now that it's been moved down in BR, I actually think is a competent option as well for scouting, because obviously the ACRA doesn't have scouting, which kind of sucks, but you know, it is how it is. The AMX-10RC, I'm very much up and down on. Yes, it has thermals, which is lovely, but the problem is its actual ability to get guns on target because its lack of stabilization. Yeah, it's not great. But with the ACRA, the lack of stabilization, because obviously it's got a very large gun, doesn't really matter, because once you fire the ATGM, you can just guide it as you go, meaning that the cursor will stay on the ATGM, so you don't have to worry about your gun going up and down and everything like that. But yeah, a lack of scouting on this machine, probably because it's mainly a tank destroyer over anything else. Definitely, you know, kind of... It takes something away from it, but because of the 8387 barrier, because at 83 you get up to a lot 287 and also 90, you're going to already have the AMX-13 Hot and the AMX-10 if you feel like it. Another thing to also note about the AMX-30 ACRA is it's actually really nicely modeled. So this is the outer side of it. This is just the animated version of it. You can see it has the normal little machine gun on the top, plus the 12.7mm, not the 20mm in the turret. You can see the turret is slightly different to other AMXs. If you want a comparison, you could probably just bring it in here. So the let's do the B2, because this is actually the B2. This is actually the B2 chassis. So this is what the B2 looks like, and then this is what the ACRA looks like. You can see it's slightly different when it comes to its turret. The turret itself is slightly bigger and slightly more, you know, all over the place. But the other thing is, if you look at the X-ray of the ACRA, which is right here, you'll notice that it has this really cool optics. So you first of all got the rangefinder, which is like this bit here. So it just lines up basically the two, you know, lenses, and wherever they line up, you know where to shoot. Then you've got this massive piece of optics, which is in front of the gunner. So on other AMX-30s, this is not here. You can see it right here, this bit. If you have a look at, like, let's say the AMX-30 B2 and its X-ray, so let's go here. Obviously you've got, oh, this is the Brennus. Let's find it where you are. There you are. Just get the ERA out of the way. So you can see here the optics is just more of a little block, whereas the other one, you know, the ACRA has this whole like cool optical system, and I'm wondering if that's going to eat rounds, just like the Breach does, because obviously that's always something to think about. If you want to shoot this vehicle and knock it out, I mean, the best place to do it is to shoot where the gunner is, which is right here, and hopefully it pens into the commander and then into all of the ammo which is stored back here. It's very much similar to all of the AMX-30s, where they have a bunch of ammo in the back of the turret, basically as the first stage ammo storage, and then you've got the part here which is next to the driver. But you should never take this. You should never take a bunch of ammo in the front here. Instead, you should only take your first stage ammo storage when it comes to this, you know, machine. It does have a decent engine. It's the same as pretty much every other AMX around the place, giving it enough power to be able to fire it around the place. Like, overall, I'm very happy to see this, just because it gives you a different weapon system. It gives you something which is different to what you see from other vehicles in a much more familiar way. So obviously, being based on the AMX-30, you have the familiarity of the speed, you have the familiarity of the crew placement and the general stuff like that. The only thing that's different is, of course, the reload, the gun itself, and the fact that it fires ATGMs. I don't think a ton of people are going to play this thing, just because of the fact that, you know, it isn't connected to the AMX-40 or the Leclerc, which is generally what people want to get to in France. But I would say don't pass it up, because at least this line, with the Foch, with the AMX-10, and with this, you get something different from each vehicle. It's not just another MBT. It's not just another medium tank. Instead, it's something which is new, which is interesting, and which is much more, I suppose, diverse in its playstyle, which I think overall is something in War Thunder that if you're not somebody who's very much try-hard, somebody who wants to just do really well at the game, I think trying to gain and garner new experiences in the game is something that should be looked at. And for the AMX-30 ACRA, that's exactly what you're getting. Compared to the other AMX-30s, it's a new and interesting experience which should be enjoyed. Anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Ambrosius McClellan, B. Young, Blackie, Daniel Stanton, Jay Wilt, John Ryman, Joseph Anders, Martinez, Moxie, Super Cacti, Uyans Terry, E-Love Goat, and Seductive Trash Can for supporting the channel.